Hello and good morning. This morning, we're going to be going over freeCodeCamp, the Intermediate Algorithm Scripting Challenge Pig Latin. Now, there's a few things that we have to go over that are new for this time, and I'm going to be going over the challenge and some of these methods that we're going to use. So let's first take a look at what we're going to be doing here today. So here is Pig Latin. Okay, so Pig Latin, I'm sure you've all had some sort of exposure to this. Basically, it takes the first consonant or consonant cluster of the English word, moves it to the end of the word with the suffix a. However, if it starts with a vowel, we just add way to the end. For example, California should be California K. Let's see, paragraphs should be paragraphs pay. If you look at algorithm here, it should be algorithm way. So what we need to do, what we need to try to do, is basically say, I've kind of started this here as a framework for us. You can already see I have an array with vowels in it that we can use. But if it starts with a vowel, add way to the end of that word. Else, we want to move all non-vowels in the beginning to the end, or that first consonant cluster, okay, until you hit a vowel, that is. And then, all right, we just want to add a to the end, okay? And then end the function. And a. That happens when you type on a touchpad over here on a laptop, and the function. Now, here's something to note in the logic of this that I just want to kind of point out in the beginning. Anytime we're going to have a return, okay, no matter what loops we're in, we're going to be returning. All right, so we have this return string. That's going to end all of our loops, okay, and end this function right here. So the strategic placement of this return is going to be important. So let me just get rid of this here, and we'll come back to this later. So again, what we're going to look to do is, if we have start with a vowel, do that. We can say return, not return, return, else end the function, or return. Okay, so you can see how we have these cases here and here. When we return, it just ends. I'll make that capital just to kind of point that out to you. So it ends what we're doing. So if it starts with a vowel and put a way at the end and just return. Else, you want to keep moving non-vowels to the end of the word until we hit a vowel. So we can start with a vowel, because we always want to start with a vowel in Pig Latin, and then add a to the end of that, and then we can end. Okay, so I think we've got that pretty well set up here. And let's go back and start taking a look at the methods that we're going to be using. So the first thing that we're going to do, you can already tell that I've broken down A, E, I, O, U, which are vowels, and those vowels I put in a simple object, an array, so that way we can use that array to check the word until we reach a consonant or a non-vowel. And a consonant can be described as a non-vowel, so therefore if I do something like this with an exclamation point, vowel, okay, see how we have the vowel here? So anything that's a vowel will be in this array. Everything that's not a vowel is going to be, well, a consonant, because it's not in that array. So that's important to note. So that's good. So we know we're going to be splitting our word into an array and doing some array methods to it. So we have to remember our join. So join can take our array and join it back into a string, which is important. So we're going from a string to an array, and then at the end we have to join it back together. Okay, we've done that a bunch of times before. Some new things that we're going to be using today, we have includes. Now includes gives us a true or a false. So includes is a method that determines whether an array includes a certain element, returning true or false. So this is a really good test, because we want to see, does it include, does the word or whatever we're doing as we're iterating through this string, which is going to be an array at that point, does it include a vowel? So if we can just say includes a vowel, all right, we get a true or a false, which helps us with our logic. So it just like it says here, includes. So it even sounds good as you're saying the code, which is good. These next two are going to be extremely important for our logic. So push we've used before. Push is simple. We have an array. We can push whatever we want to the end of an array. All right, so that's all push does. It just adds an element to an array, to the end of an array. All right, and then it just returns that whole array. All right, the new length of the array is actually what it returns. But we're not going to be returning it. We're just going to be using it to modify an array, which is going to be an important distinction here with shift. Okay, now shift. This is where it can get a little bit confusing. So let's, so we really want to pay attention to how we're going to be using shift. So shift itself can modify an array. So you can see here where we just use, we have an array, we use shift, and what shift did is it took off the first element of that array. All right, now it's modified the array. So the array no longer includes that element. However, we can use this in a more complex way because of this right here. See how this says and returns that element. So if we use the shift element as the input to another method, what we're really doing is using the first element of that array as the input now of the next element. So what I can do essentially is modify this array. This array could be a word even, and we kind of see where my logic is going here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be modifying this array. So let's say 1, 2, 3 was my string word, and I can shift that array. So now I have 2, 3, but I've modified the array. However, I can return that element. So I can return that element now, which is a 1. So if I apply another string method to this shift, or use that as an input to another string method, which would be the push, I can then push that returned element, or 1, and that what that would do is I would push it to the end. So so the array now would be 2, 3, 1, which is exactly what we want to do in Pig Latin. So one more time, shift shifts the array, modifies the array, and then remembers that element that it removed, and then uses that to return. So I can return that element, that single element, to, let's say, a push, to push what was left off at the end. So it modifies the array and then remembers what it took off, and then returns that to, something else that we can use. In this case, we're going to be using it to push. All right, so that's going to be the base of our logic, and you're going to kind of see that happen as we go through. But that sort of relationship between how shift modifies an array and what it returns becomes very important in understanding how we're going to be solving this. All right, so we already have our var, which is our vowels, which we can use as our test. We're going to make a new variable. All right, and that variable, we're going to make our resulting array. So our results, we'll just call it our pig for our Pig Latin. So we're going to have our pig is going to be our what we're taking into our function here, which is our string, and that string is a string word, and I want to make that an array. And so just like join joins together, remember we can also split, and split does the opposite of our join, where join took an array, made it a string. If we want a string and make it an array, we can split. We've used this a lot. And if we split by an empty array, it's going to take each letter of that word. All right, so there we go. So I have pig, which is going to be an array now. So remember that at this point, that what we brought in here, okay, this string is now an array. Let's take care of our first case scenario. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this up to help our spacing in a little bit. Make a little bit more sense. So I'll make a space here. So here, if it starts with a vowel, add way to the end. That seems pretty reasonable, right? So literally it's an if statement. If vowel, okay, that includes. All right, so remember where we at here, includes. All right, so if we're looking at includes, and then we can test for what we're including. So if our vowel All right, anything that's in our vowel array here includes our array from our pig, right? So we can use the first position of this pig array, or we can just use what we brought in this string. So if the string itself, this str, and the very first letter, okay, remember it's a zero-base index system even for a string. So if that first letter of that string includes a vowel, any vowel, all right, what we want to do is just add way to the end. So again, remember, return is going to return out of all of our logic, and then it ends this program. So we can just say return, right, str plus equals way. So not equals plus, plus equals way. So as you can see here, in this case, we don't even use this variable pig at all. We don't take that string, we don't put it into, we didn't have to worry about splitting it. And since we didn't have to worry about using this pig, we can just concatenate way. Okay, so that's just going to be a string. So we're taking a string in, string out, and we don't have to worry about splitting and joining anything. However, part of our code done. Now here's the else here. Now this else is where we have to make sure we follow our logic. Okay, so else, why don't we give ourselves a little bit of space here so we can kind of see else. What do we need to do in this else? Well, else, remember our for loops. So our for loops become important because I want to check every element of this str or every element of pig, which is now an array. So I can iterate through an array, okay, which is just this string, put it into an array, iterate through each element and try to identify the beginning of that element that are consonants, or the element that are not vowels. Okay, so how many not vowels do we have at the beginning? And we want to go through, and remember we have our shift and push. I want to push that shifted letter to the end. All right, so this is where we get a little crazy here. So let's start off with the for loop. So we all know a standard for loop, just like we use every time. Var I equals 0, right? And you should be coming pretty used to this. As long as I is less than your str dot length. And again, like it doesn't have to be str dot length. Now the str dot length is the same as the pig dot length, so you can use pig dot length too. They're both going to be the same thing. And I plus. Now we also happen to know that our for loop here, since we're only going to get the first group of constants, is never really going to make it to the end of that length because we're going to exit once we hit a vowel. So that's okay. So let's go here. So str. So what do we do inside of this for loop? All right. So inside of this for loop, what we want to say is if we hit a consonant. So if we hit a consonant, which in this case is not a vowel, if we hit a consonant, all right, and so that's if not a vowel, then remember how we used includes again at that string 0, so we could do the same thing. So vowel, if not a vowel, dot includes, right, we can just say str I, all right. So we're iterating through the array, and this is going to be the vowel at that position. All right, whether it's the first, second, third letter of that, as long as that right there is going to be a consonant. First consonant cluster is what we're looking at. This is where that logic came in that we're going to be using right now. We want to result dot push. Okay, what do we want to push? We want to push that consonant, all right, to the end of the array. And remember, how do we use this? Well, we can push the uh, well, this we called it pig, right? So yeah, pig push, right? So pig dot push, pig shift, and this is what happens when you work on a shift. There we go. 1, 2, 3, semicolon. Okay. So here we go. So we have our shifted pig here. So we have the modified array, and this is where it returns. So not only does it modify the array, but it also returns what it cut off at the beginning. So I'm pushing what it cut off at the beginning to the end of this pig array, which has already been modified by shift. So shift is doing two things here for us, which is kind of cool. So there we go. So as long as we hit consonants to the first consonant cluster, whether it's like a T, a TR, and as soon as we hit something that is a vowel, we're going to bounce to an else. Else. Right? So now we've gotten through our first consonant cluster, and we're all set up with our pig Latin. If we were working with California, all right, we would have California with a C, and then all we have to do is add that AY on the end, right? So let's just say we're going to, let's add the AY. So pig dot push again. Push A. Look at that California now. We have California K, but we have to return to end this pig dot join here. End the sentence. Always remember to end your sentences. And we should have generated enough of these brackets to fulfill ourselves. And let's give this a test. Aha, most triumphant. Perfect. So you can see the hardest part of this logic was figuring out exactly how to get something off of the beginning of a word and then push it to the end. And this line of code right here works perfectly for that. And when I found that, I was actually really excited. I had to go in and actually research and try to figure out exactly what it was doing, which is important. So even though you have, you can copy an answer, which is great, you really want to be understanding what's going on, which is actually way more important than anything else. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful. And remember, try to make sure that you can understand what's happening here between what this shift is doing. And be seeing you next time.